Today, the United States of America was fundamentally transformed. We are now a post-racial nation. It's sad that it took a tragedy like the shooting in Charleston, but now the source of racism, hatred, and violence in America has finally been removed from the South Carolina Statehouse grounds. Don't you feel all warm and fuzzy inside? Here in studio with me, feeling perhaps not as warm and fuzzy as I am, to tell us about his feelings is Jonathan Harris, my favorite political lefty. Now, Jonathan, feeling fuzzy? I mean, I guess I could just start with asking you, will South Carolina's removal of the Confederate flag, what will it do for race relations around the world?
It's symbolic. I mean, it's certainly not going to.
So now it doesn't matter?
No. It certainly matters. It's symbolic. I mean, I think the United States has a history of racism that goes back hundreds of years. There's not one single act that's going to resolve it, but it's a symbolic gesture that helps with, I think it was John Stewart that sort of called it a sort of racist wallpaper that is all over this country that you don't even realize is there. You drive by, monuments to Confederate soldiers and, flags that are, I mean, the creator of the Confederate flag was very clear about what it was. It was intended to be based on the inferiority of what he felt, were African Americans. So there's no question about what the flag was, and by lowering it, it is definitely a symbolic gesture that I think is very important.
Mm-hmm. More divided or less divided now that it's come down?
Well, I don't think it really has. I don't think it's played a role. I think the division.
Really, you don't feel that we're more divided now?
No. The fact of the matter is, I think this country has always been divided. That's that north-south. Confederate states versus the United States. There's always been a division. The blue state, red state. That's always been there. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's going to make that worse. I do think it's going to agitate a lot of people who, felt that that's where it belonged. Sure, I think it'll make that worse.
I want to read you a quote from one of our people on social media. Mike Geller says, "The Democrat Party name needs to be removed from all public property in America. After all, they came up with that Confederate flag. They also founded the KKK, instituted Jim Crow, opposed the Civil Rights Act, and one of them shot Martin Luther King." Right. He's former state leader, by the way, of, I believe, the if it's not the ACLU, it's something just like that, the guy that wrote this. And let's not forget their darling heroine, Margaret Sanger, who wanted to rid America of black people through abortion, and they've been very successful, and sterilization. Be careful, liberals. You might get what you ask for. Jonathan, your comments.
Very often I feel like sometimes conservatives fell asleep in class. And I'm like, hey, wake up! We're on page 2015. It's that's a great. I mean, it's interesting.
I mean, are we though? Because
we are.
Because Jonathan, and I want to give you a chance to finish that thought. It's not fair of me to interrupt you like this, but that's kind of how I feel about liberals. Honestly, could we stop talking about slavery? Because I've never owned slaves.
Right, absolutely.
And can we just look at forward?
Right.
And it seems to me like those who want to scream about race, and it's certainly not all blacks. I have a lot of black friends who could think we need to get it over with and need to stop talking about it. But it seems to me like I don't buy it. I'm not going to lie to you. I think this is a tool of the Democrat Party to enslave black people, to continue to offer them free stuff so that they get their votes and power and money. That's what I really think. I mean, I'm just laying it out for you.
I sort of think that about conservatism and Republicans. I mean, if you look at the poorest, most welfare-dependent parts of the country are the South. And it is the white South that depends on the most welfare, and it is Republicans that drag them on and on and on through that.
Republicans do not get, by and large, the poor vote.
No, I'm saying they get the Southern vote, though. The Southern poor vote they get in droves, and they have them poor and on welfare dependent. So I think, and then they hand out tax breaks to corporations. I think both parties hand out.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah, both parties hand out nuggets to their constituents.
But then you can't take away the fact that Barack Obama took more Wall Street money by far than Mitt Romney did.
Right,
and so the Republicans have the reputation, but the reality is that the Democrats actually get more money from Wall Street.
Right. So no, that's not even anything I would argue. What I'm talking about is in terms of using things for race relations and things like that. It's very easy to argue that a lot of conservatives use racial issues to keep their base riled up. I think it was Lindsey Graham who said that the Conservative Party wasn't generating enough angry white men to stay alive. So I mean, I think both groups. Actually, I'm not even going to say that. I don't think Democrats do it. I think what Democrats try to do is move us forward, remove the flag, take down the monuments. Let's live in 2015 and get rid of these homages to the past, a very shameful past, and move forward.
At what point, Jonathan, are we finished? At what point can we move forward?
You know,
what's it going to take? How many black people have to die? How many black towns like Ferguson that are thriving have to be burned down by $30 million of Soros money and the likes of Al Sharpton? How many times does that have to plague our black neighborhoods before we go, okay, it's done?
I don't think Al Sharpton had any role in the part that in any kind of rioting in Ferguson, but I think when you see people that are more concerned about a CVS burning than 9 black churches that have burned in the last few weeks, I think you start to see the amount of work that we have to get done. Because you saw conservative news just up in arms, couldn't believe that a CVS was burned as a result of people being massacred in the street.
What's the point where we say we're done?
We've got a lot of work to do. I think
we're not even close.
We're probably not close. I mean, we have to reform our education system and so on and so forth. We have textbooks, I think it is in Texas, that are trying to completely obliterate the role of the KKK and lynchings and things like that because it's not comfortable. I heard just the opposite about the
textbooks in Texas. I heard that they were reinstituting history and saying things like that, hey, by the way, George Washington should maybe have as many pages as the KKK. And that was the kind of changes they're making.
That's a new headline. It came out, I believe it was this week, that they're rewriting the history books to kind of roll back and kind of whitewash history, and that does a lot of damage. That does a lot of damage.
That's a gross generalization. That's not what they're doing. They're saying, hey, if the KKK is going to have 3 pages in our history book, how about George Washington has 3 pages in our history books? I mean, that's fair. That's actually balanced.
That's good, but that's not what they're doing. They're trying to very specifically play down the role of a lot of the racism that's occurred. They don't talk about, redlining, for example, that created ghettos in this country, which was specifically not giving loans to groups of to only white people. They only gave loans to white people, creating, white separated communities and things like that.
What the IRS has done in targeting Tea Party groups, and that happens, and it's all horrible.
But I mean, that's where the racial division comes from, and when we compensate for that, then we'll be good.
I think the racial division comes from Al Sharpton and Barack Obama.
I think it comes from Bill O'Reilly and Rush Limbaugh, who love to create that group of angry white men that Lindsey Graham was talking about.
You and I are going to have to still disagree.
We agreed once, right?
We did agree once. That was a moment in history.
That was historic.
Thanks so much for being with us, Jonathan. Up next.